Hey everyone, this is James from TDB bringing another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking a little bit about iron cakes and why I think they might be one of the most challenging things to steep for a beginner, especially approaching pour. So iron cakes, what are they exactly? Well, they are just sort of like your normal cakes, except they are pressed into iron. So you can see that you have this edge here and it's just very compressed. So yeah, this is the 2001 Shaguan Hefei, Xiao Hefei from Teas We Like, and it's just very compressed. You're not talking about like boutique productions with a lot of whole leaves here. And so I think, especially if you've just had experience with kind of those more contemporary productions where you can more or less just break stuff up with your hands pretty easily, these are a little bit of a challenge. So I do think it's pretty necessary to get a pick. This is key. These are not particularly expensive. I got mine ages ago from Yunnan Sourcing. I have a couple of them. Oftentimes, vendors will just toss in freebies of these things, but really essential to getting in here. Things to not worry about. Don't worry about breaking up leaves and things like that. You are already dealing with an iron cake. I think in general, people can get a little bit too concerned with just kind of how the leaves look in the gaiwan. So you want to break it up into little small pieces. For instance, I did a blind of a couple iron cakes yesterday, and you want stuff that's like, you want it to be several different chunks. You don't want to be just brewing 5 chunks or 6 or 7 chunks. You want it to be something like 15 or 20 at something like that. So you want the tea to be very, very well broken up, and that's just going to allow you to have a much more even brewing experience. It's also going to make your life a lot easier later when you're trying to calibrate how long you should steep for. You can steep things much more normally if you break it up more, because if you just toss in one big chunk of an iron cake, your extraction is just going to be very wonky. It's going to be very uneven. It's technically possible to brew that well, but you are not setting yourself up for success, and you're most likely going to have a couple very, very light steeps to start with. So another thing with iron cakes too, as is the case with most things, most difficult things, is it's helpful to just get practice and repetitions. Once you know what a tea can be like, you can just make adjustments to how you're brewing. Be like, okay, that came out a little bit light, and I know that this tea can be a little bit darker, or it's like a little too bitter. Then you just scale your steeps back and whatnot. So it's really important to get repetitions. I think if someone just had 1 or 2 tries with an iron cake, that's just not enough for something that can be a little bit challenging to brew. So yeah, definitely break it up into chunks. Use this. I went on a trip over the summer to just my in-laws in the Portland area, and I brought a tool that I intended to drink. I was like, okay, I have experience. I can just split this thing with my hands or whatnot. And it is a Shaguan tool. It's from 2004, so it's not even a particularly young tool. And I had a very difficult time, so much so that I gave up on even brewing it because I didn't want to brew just a chunk or whatnot. And so, you really do need these teaware tools in order to make your life easier. They're not particularly expensive, so definitely go seek these sorts of things out. The other thing with iron cakes too is just the extraction is going to be a little bit different than a normal cake. What I like to do for these teas too, because they are a little bit slower to extract at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you're getting a lot of extraction very quickly, is sort of like when you're brewing a rolled oolong, you can start with a little bit longer steep. So you could start with 15 seconds or 20 seconds when normally you would be starting with a flash for something that you can break up all the way. So you start a little bit longer. Once you know the color that you're getting, I think something like a gaiwan is actually really good for that. Not because of the heat retention per se, but because you can just react very quickly to basically how fast the leaves are kind of unfurling and coming apart. You can see the liqueur very easily. So you're like, okay, I know I like this tea when it brews and orangish red. I can just peek at the gaiwan and see, is it orangish red? And you can react to just how the iron cake happens to be extracting there. But yes, what I like to do is brew for a little bit longer for the initial, say, 2 to 3 steeps. Then you'll probably end up scaling that back to something closer to a flash, and then from there you kind of just go by feel. And I think a lot of the gongfu aspect, the skillful aspect of this, is knowing when to lean into a tea as well as when to lean out a bit. And I think even for me, when I first started to brew Iron Cake 8653, working through a cake, it took me a bit to get used to it, just because, it is just inherently a little bit trickier. And so I do highly recommend people get experience with the Iron Cakes fairly early, in particular because the Iron Cake 8653 or the tools are kind of classic Shaguan productions, and I think even in the end, if you're not going to like them, I think they're absolutely worthwhile for people to try and to try to understand well. There's something I wish I did a lot earlier in my tea journey. I think they can also be absolutely delicious tea. So yeah, that concludes this episode. Let me know how you liked it, just kind of talking generally about it. So A, break up your teas really well. B, potentially lean on the tea a little bit more at the start. And I think once you get those and you get repetitions going, I think it'll become a lot more straightforward to brew. So yes, thank you all for tuning in. Let me know how you like this, and I will see y'all next time. Cheers.